Why did ancient humans marry at 14? Ancient marriage wasn't a romantic event. It was a business deal, a survival contract. Two families, two clans, two groups of people, choosing to share resources, protect one another, and produce the next generation before the world killed them first. There was no "I do." In many ancient societies, marriage could be marked by something much simpler: moving into the same shelter, sharing food, or taking part in a ceremony witnessed by the tribe. And the bride and groom? They rarely had much say, because in ancient times, personal choice was a luxury that most people simply couldn't afford. Here's what's fascinating. Early human marriage wasn't always about just two individuals. In many hunter-gatherer societies, marriage created alliances between entire groups. Marrying your daughter into a neighboring clan could mean the difference between war and peace, between starvation and shared food. It wasn't personal. It was political. It was survival. And age? Age meant very little, until the body said otherwise. Why age 14 became common. Here's something most people never realize. Ancient humans didn't think in years the way we do today. There were no calendars, no birthday parties, no one saying, "Congratulations, you're 14 now." What ancient communities did recognize was puberty, the moment a young person's body showed signs of being able to reproduce. They were biologically viewed as an adult. And in a world where many people never reached old age, every single year of reproductive life mattered. Think about that. If you might die around your mid-30s, and you needed to raise children who would survive long enough to have children of their own, waiting until 25 to start a family wasn't considered wise. It was risky. But here's where the story becomes more complicated. Anthropologists point out that average life expectancy in ancient times can be misleading. Many children died very young from disease, infection, or injury. Those who survived into adulthood often lived into their 40s, 50s, or even 60s. The real tragedy was child mortality. If half of your children might never reach their 5th birthday, you didn't plan for 2 children. You planned for 6, maybe 8. And to do that, you started early. How daily life forced early marriage. Imagine waking up every single morning with only one goal: stay alive. That was everyday life for most ancient humans. The archaeological record shows that ancient people lived under enormous physical stress. An infection that we cure today with a simple pill could become fatal in only a few days. A broken leg could easily become a death sentence. In a world like that, waiting years before starting a family wasn't wisdom. It was a gamble. The environment was equally unforgiving. Ice ages, long droughts, dangerous predators, seasons of starvation. Food wasn't guaranteed. Shelter wasn't permanent. Every extra person in the group meant another hunter, another gatherer, another protector. Children weren't only family. They were the workforce. They were security. They were the future. Here's something that surprises many people. In many hunter-gatherer societies, children as young as 6 or 7 already contributed to daily survival. They gathered berries, carried water, watched younger siblings. By 12 or 13, many were already joining hunting trips or major gathering expeditions. By 14 or 15, their society no longer viewed them as children. They were adults who happened to be young. Marriage wasn't taking away childhood, because by their definition, childhood had already ended. There's another important reason. Marriage often created peace between different clans. A young woman marrying into another tribe wasn't only becoming a wife. She was helping create an alliance. A promise that 2 groups would cooperate instead of fight. It may sound harsh today, but for thousands of years, it worked. What movies get wrong? Modern movies often get ancient history completely wrong. Myth number 1. Ancient people simply chose to marry young. Not really. For most communities, survival left very few alternatives. Without medicine, without hospitals, without stored food, nature constantly demanded one thing: reproduce early. Myth number 2. Everyone married at 14. That's not true either. The age varied greatly across different cultures, different regions, and different time periods. Some societies actually married later, especially where food and resources were more reliable. There was never one universal rule. Myth number 3. Young people had absolutely no choice. Reality was more complicated. Studies of hunter-gatherer societies show that in some cultures, young men, and sometimes young women, could express preferences. It wasn't modern consent, but also wasn't always complete force. Myth number 4. Ancient humans were emotionally less developed than we are. Evidence suggests the opposite. Their brains were almost identical to ours. They loved. They mourned. They formed deep emotional bonds. Some of the oldest burial sites ever discovered contain flowers placed beside the dead. A simple act of grief. That still feels deeply human today. They married young. Not because they lacked emotion, but because survival demanded it. Surprising facts most people don't know. Now the story becomes even more fascinating. Modern DNA research has revealed something remarkable. Ancient people traveled much farther than researchers once believed. Some individuals formed partnerships hundreds of miles from where they were born. Marriage wasn't limited to one village. It connected distant communities long before roads, maps, or the internet. Archaeology has also uncovered evidence suggesting that not every ancient partnership followed the same social pattern. Some burial sites don't fit our modern expectations. Historians are still debating exactly what those discoveries mean. And that tells us something important. Ancient society was more complex than we often imagine. Then farming changed everything. Around 10,000 years ago, people settled permanently. Land became property. Property needed heirs. And suddenly, marriage became connected to wealth, inheritance, and power. Early marriage became more structured, more regulated, and more important to society. Finally, there's one scientific fact ancient humans could never have known. Today we know that the human brain continues developing until around the age of 25. Ancient people had no brain scans, no neuroscience, no modern medicine. To them, a physically mature teenager simply looked like an adult. Modern science completely changed that understanding. And that knowledge helped reshape how much of the world defines adulthood today. Here's the thought that stays with you. Ancient humans who married at 14 weren't primitive. They weren't cruel. And they weren't thoughtless. They were solving the greatest challenge every living creature has ever faced. Survival. Every decision they made, the age, the alliances, the family structure, made perfect sense inside a world filled with danger, disease, and uncertainty. We didn't abandon those traditions because humans suddenly became smarter. We changed them because life became safer. Better food, better medicine, lower child mortality, longer lives. As survival became easier, childhood became longer. Adulthood arrived later. And the meaning of being ready changed forever. In a strange way, the fact that we can now debate the right age for marriage, for responsibility, or for adulthood, is proof of how far humanity has come. Ancient humans gave everything they had, simply to make sure the next generation would exist, so that one day, you could be here. And now, you have the luxury of asking questions they never had time to ask. That's not a small thing. Think about that. The next time you take tomorrow for granted.